not prepared with all of my electronic devices here. So anyway, welcome to Clarksville Highway on Wednesday night, and it's good to see you. Well, it's good to know that you're out there. I can't really see you. You know that. I was going to try to get on here where I could monitor the chat. And so if you have questions, you can put those on there. Hey, Beverly Russell is watching us, so shout out to Beverly for watching. And hello. And so I think, did you get some comments on there, Jeff?
Yeah, Linda and Buddy said hello to Cheryl. So
Thank you.
They're excited to hear from you tonight.
Well, cool. So again, thanks for tuning in, and we're doing something a little different. We started a couple of weeks ago. We have a little bit of Bible study, then we interact and just ask questions. So Cheryl is the guest of honor tonight. So give her a hand, Jay, for Cheryl. And I am monitoring the Facebook chat, and I am also monitoring the YouTube chat, and Jeff is also monitoring one of the Facebook chats. So if you got a question, throw it into the question box. And if you don't have that, you can send me a text message, and I should get it. And maybe I will recognize if I get it. Sometimes I forget to look at my phone, and I don't feel the watch vibrate. So we're going to spend the next couple of weeks talking about the Passover. And that was a request. Travis Claude wanted us to talk about the Passover. He sent a list of questions, which, Travis, I'm sorry, we're not going to get to those questions tonight, but he sent some really good questions so we can talk about the Passover. And Travis, I got to read this to you because I thought this was really cool. We did not do this tonight, but maybe we'll do it one of the nights. One comment was that he thought it would be, got too many papers in here. It would be neat to see the panel dressed in Old Testament garments and standing with your staff like in Exodus and then reclining like in the New Testament. So we'll work on that. But yeah, that's a great idea, Cheryl. So Travis, we'll have you in tonight that we are ready to go with staff in hand, because in Exodus that's how they were supposed to eat it, with the staff in hand, ready to leave. So all that kind of cool. So you find the Passover in Exodus chapter 12. That is where it is first introduced, which is from a word which means to pass over, which makes perfect sense, right? So kind of a neat little word that means to pass over. So we call it the Passover, and it is to commemorate when God passed over the Israelite houses that had the blood, or all the houses that had the blood on the doorpost in the Old Testament, in the 10th plague, when God was leading the Israelites out of Egypt. So tonight, and by the way, if you want to write these down, you find Exodus chapter 12, Leviticus 23, Numbers 9, and Deuteronomy 16 are some of the key passages where you read about the Passover. I didn't put those on a slide. So Exodus 12, Leviticus 23, Numbers 9, Deuteronomy 16, and if you didn't get all of those, send me a text and we'll get those to you. I'm going to have a terrible time kind of monitoring this. So,
Good.
All right, I'm good, I think. Trying to find if there are any comments in there yet. One thing that I thought was really neat, and hey, and we're not on a time frame in this class, so I mean, we'll do about 30 minutes of Bible study maybe, and then like 30 minutes of interview, maybe longer, who knows. But depends on how much Cheryl has to say.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was really interesting in the text, I don't know if you've ever noticed this or not, but let me get this right, in Exodus and also in Deuteronomy, it says that it is during the month of Abib. Some people say Abib. I think it's Abib. But later, I mean, like when you look at a Jewish calendar, and I think we have a slide that Reggie can show us. That I was going to try to read that, but look, it's very interesting. There's no way in the world I can read what that says from back here. But when you look at the calendar, it's in the month of Nisan. Nisan. Sometimes it's spelled Nissan, depending on who transliterates it. And the reason for that is there is a change in the name of the months after the Israelites go into Babylonian captivity. They change the names of several of the months, maybe all of them, but I'm not sure we have all of them recorded in the text. So if you're reading in the text and you see that Passover is on the 14th day of Abib, then you look at another calendar and it says it's on the 14th day of Nisan. That's why it's that way, because the name changed in Babylonian captivity. They took Babylonian kind of loan words for the names of the month. And those of you on the live stream can see that chart much better than we can, but that is where the different feasts fall within the year. So you had Passover, which was one day, which was Nisan or Aviv the 14th, and then the 15th through the 21st, you had the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which was 7 days that you would only eat unleavened bread. And then on the 16th, you had the Feast of the First Fruits. So you had three things happening within that week. So you had Passover, the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The second day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread was also the Feast of First Fruits, and then the rest of the month, which was the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And so the First Fruits, the way that fell, I had to go look this up, by the way, because I didn't know that. Jeff was asking questions about it.
Oh, yeah,
that would be the like the wheat and the barley, oats, peas, chickpeas, lentils. That's the kind of things that they'll be harvested in that first part of the year. They start planting those November. Our calendar would be November, December, and then they start to harvest the first sections of those in March, April, which coincides with Passover. So it was just kind of like a really busy week. I was trying to think what that would be like in our society, and this is the best I could come up with. I'm sorry. The best I could come up with is the week between Christmas and New Year's, because in that week,
Bunch of holidays.
a lot of people, they don't do anything. I mean, it kind of starts with Thanksgiving. And it's not as bad from Thanksgiving to Christmas. But I remember when I was in sales, after Thanksgiving, it was really hard to get people to really talk to you a lot between Thanksgiving and Christmas, unless they were trying to get like Christmas presents and stuff. But then from Christmas to New Year's, I mean, that week, you might as well just forget it, because
take
you
the
couldn't
week
really, that was a good time to plan and count inventory and figure out, what the next year was supposed to look like, because nobody wanted to see anybody like in a sales call kind of environment, because they just kind of checked out. Yeah, they kind of checked out. So I don't know if that week was kind of like that, but it's kind of what it reminds me
Isn't
of.
the beginning of the year like that too, though? Because people don't have any money after Christmas and stuff.
Oh no, new budgets kick in. We're good.
Maybe
We're
that's
kinda
just
good
like
with
people
that.
don't go out to eat. Seems like
Yeah.
at the end of the year.
Yeah, that could be. Well, that's because everybody made a New Year's resolution to lose weight. That doesn't happen. So I quit making those. It's kind of neat too that the word Abib in Hebrew, that's also the word for like ears of grain that are ready to roast, like they're ripened. So the first month is actually kind of named for the harvest of the I just thought that was kind of interesting. So anyway, at Passover, you're supposed to remove all of the leaven from your house. And I thought it was interesting in Exodus 13:7, and I had never really, I think that's the wrong verse, by the way. I think I typed, let me see. Yeah, Exodus 13:7, it's about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Make sure we don't have any questions here. James Hicks is watching. Hello, James Hicks. And it says, I thought this verse was interesting because I'd never noticed this before. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen with you, and no leavened bread shall be seen with you in all your territory. And until today, I had never really picked that up. And I wondered, I didn't have a chance to look this up, so if somebody out there knows, comment in the comment box. If it couldn't be found in the whole territory, what did they do with it? Have you ever read anything about that, of what they did with it if it couldn't be in the territory? I mean, did they destroy it? Like if you had to go into your house, Cheryl, and you had to take away everything. We're not going to ask about Jeff because he's single. He doesn't keep any food in his house. He goes out to eat all the time. But if you go into your house and you have to take out everything with leaven, I mean, what kind of things can you think of?
Cereal and crackers. I guess cakes, Little Debbie cakes.
Yeah, Hostess cupcakes have got to go.
All
Little Debbie cake.
that.
That's sad.
Rice Krispie treats.
My Cheerios are gone. Okay, I don't know about Rice Krispie treats. I don't know if they have leaven.
Okay if they're right.
Yeah, I don't know if they have leaven
Are
in
they
them
actually
or not.
rice?
Are there things that we don't really think about having leaven? I'm not much on the
bread. I mean, obviously. I
Yeah,
guess
but are there
bread.
things that have leaven that we don't really think about having leaven in them? I mean, I know breads and cakes
We
and
talked about like stuff that is breaded, like fried things,
yeah. So like if you had chicken tenders, you'd have to get rid of
like
those.
something frozen that was breaded or something.
Yeah, I guess no batter
fish
crusted
sticks.
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So no shake and bake, maybe. Do you remember shake and bake? Oh, shake and bake. And I'm sorry, that makes me think of Aunt Hazel. If Diane's mom's listening, she'll know that. But shake and bake. So no shake and bake. I was just trying to think of things that might have leaven that you would have to take out of the house. So you can imagine just going into your house and taking everything that had leaven out. But not only would they do that, they would like sweep the corners. Like they had to look in the corners and the crevices of the house. I don't know what your house is like, but it reminds me of like where our washer and dryer are. So we put the hangers up here, right? So you're taking the hangers off so you can hang the clothes up when you get them out of the dryer. And invariably, I drop one behind the dryer.
Sock or something.
And then I have to go behind the dryer to get the hanger out, but I only do that a couple of times a year, so there's several back in there. But you would have to go into every little place to make sure that all of the leaven was out of your house. So for 8 days, Passover, plus the next 7 days, you wouldn't eat anything leavened. And all the leaven would have to be out of your house and even out of your
borders of
territory.
your territory.
Yeah, evidently the borders of your territory, which again, I don't know how they got rid of that. I don't know if they destroyed it.
Did they have like a Fat Tuesday thing where you eat it all before?
I don't know. I have no idea how you would get rid of that.
It's
It looks like you would kind of
interesting.
plan for that, like okay, Passover's coming up. We have to start eating everything that's got.
Because it sounds like it was almost sinful for them to have had it.
Yeah, it says
I
that
mean,
if
no-
you
no
have it,
mistakes allowed.
yeah. So it says if you have it, like within those days, that you're supposed to be cut off from the people, like you're supposed to be removed, and so and that's really kind of interesting. But I was just kind of jotting notes down. I was watching a guy one time talking about Passover, and he was talking about them sweeping out the corners of the house, and he used that as an illustration that we're supposed to sweep out the corners of our lives and our minds. You know, so that's kind of an interesting thought, even when we have like unleavened bread with communion, that it's a time that you can do a lot of introspection and you can think about things in your life, because leaven is, we'll look at this first, I mean, it does kind of represent something that permeates something else, and a lot of times it's even used kind of in a negative light. I won't say it's used like in a totally sinful light, but a really negative light, like beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, that's a time for us to do that introspection where you can, you know, kind of sweep out the corners of your mind and get rid of bad thoughts and bad actions and kind of think about purity and things that honor God. And that's a great thing when you're doing, like, I mean, however people choose to do that with communion. Right. And I don't know how other people do that. You know, like sometimes, like, y'all can comment about how you do it. I mean, like, sometimes I'll think about a Bible verse, or sometimes I'll, you know, do introspection. Sometimes I'll think about Jesus, and it's really, people have such different taste, preferences. Maybe that's a better word, preferences. Like, a lot of times we'll sing a song, like we'll have communion and then we'll have like a song of introspection or a song that we think about. And then some people don't like that song. because they want it to be quiet and want it to be silent. And then some people say, well, no, I want a song. And some people say, well, I want it to be quiet and be silent. And you just kind of have to bounce those things. Travis Claude says Martha White, self-rising flour, and hot rise cornmeal. Yeah, I was thinking about those, Travis. No cornbread, no cornbread, and no hush puppies. That's the one that would get me, no hush puppies. Not that I eat hush puppies that often, but I like hush
I
puppies.
kind of just, whatever the person that's leading communion, whatever they talk about to make them think about communion, that's kind of what I think about too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
it
and
just
I like-
depends on the week, I guess.
Yeah, and I like communion thoughts. I mean, I like when somebody gets up there and shares something. And,
It was pretty cool.
yeah.
Linda has a question. She said, how many types of food would have had leaven in their day?
Well, I was trying to think about that. You know, they made cakes, you know, like, not cakes like we think about cakes
Raisin
as
cakes.
much,
Cakes,
but like
like-
date cakes and raisin cakes and bread that they would normally make. You know, because actually during the, let me think, it's the Feast of the First, it's not the Feast of the First Fruits. I wrote this down somewhere. During one of them, during the Feast of the First Fruits, you shall bring from your dwelling places 2 loaves. Now that doesn't seem right. Feast of the First Fruit. Where was my calendar at? When was the Feast of the First Fruit?
The 16th of Nisan, or
Yeah, so, you know, that's a good question, because I wrote this down. Is it really it's a feast of, maybe it's the Feast of Weeks. One of them, you actually made the bread, I think it's the Feast of Weeks. You actually make the bread, and it specifically says you're supposed to make it with leaven. But I think I think I wrote the wrong verse down there. I think it's the Feast of Weeks. Yeah. It says, you shall bring from your dwelling places 2 loaves of bread to be waved, made with 2/10 of an ephah. They shall be fine flour, and they shall be baked with leaven as first fruits to the Lord. So there's actually
Where's that at?
one, that's in Leviticus 23:17. So there's actually those 2 loaves of bread, they're not offered on the altar, because evidently things that are offered on the altar don't have leaven, but actually that one particularly has leaven. Would that include wine which is made with yeast? I wouldn't think so, because Jesus drank wine at Passover. So I guess that's a good question, Travis. You've got to give me more information. I guess wine ferments, so I guess it makes, I don't know if there's yeast in wine when it ferments or not. I guess it is, because it ferments.
I've never made
Hey,
it.
I have to look that up, Travis. I don't know. But they drank wine at the Passover, so I'm assuming because that is from
But
a
there's probably
fruit.
different types of wine.
Yeah, because that's from a fruit, that it would be excluded. Because the wine harvest was usually grapes, July and August. June, July, and August, and September. So I don't know if you could keep those unfermented until April. Well, I didn't mean to get off on wine, but since Travis asked that question, the ways that you could do it to keep it from fermenting is you could boil it, and it made like a syrup, and then you would mix that with water. Or if you had a cave or a deep well that was cold, you could put it in wineskins and put it in a cold environment so it wouldn't ferment. But not everybody had that available, so most of the wine would just naturally ferment because it's just a natural process. But you were a barbarian if you didn't mix it with water. So you would cut it so it wouldn't be, it'd have a really low alcoholic content by the time you did all of that. Okay, we got off on a tangent there. But you're supposed to eat it, you're supposed to eat the unleavened bread at Passover like you're eating it in haste, which is why it's unleavened, because you don't have time for the bread to rise, which reminds me of going to my mom's house, and she makes rolls. So when the rolls are setting out for Mom to make, and she used the same pecan can that they've used ever since they've gotten married. But if those rolls are sitting there, you're supposed to walk through the kitchen pretty lightly You don't want to make the rolls fall, but then she has to put them out there and let them rise, that and the bread, so that they'll rise properly before she bakes them. So you're eating it in haste. So it's the bread of haste, and it's also called the bread of affliction. And I'm not sure about affliction as much as haste, to remind you of the affliction of being in bondage.
In slavery in Egypt, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. And I think this is not really a true parallel, but I think it's pretty interesting when you think about it. We were probably, in some ways, we'll leave this life in a hurry too, right? So we're always on a journey to be delivered from bondage, and not just the bondage of sin that comes through Jesus, but it's like that idea that Paul writes about in Romans, where the whole creation is groaning, waiting to be freed and to be glorified. So even in our bodies, we're groaning, longing for the next life.
Yeah.
So we'll leave in a hurry. So
True.
I'm not trying to draw too many comparisons with communion, but that's something even when you're taking communion, it's something to think about. It gives you an opportunity to balance like all of the things in life and look at the things that are really important,
Yeah, for sure.
and filter those other things out.
I'm kind of backing up here a little bit. So, did they only eat unleavened bread? Or if they were eating bread, it had to be unleavened during Passover?
If they ate bread, it was unleavened.
But they could eat other things that weren't
Yeah,
leavened.
yeah. You would have, like the Passover meal, you had
Right.
meat and bitter herbs, and
what I
certain
was
things
thinking.
that you ate that day. But if you had bread, it had to be unleavened bread.
Okay. That's
But
what I was thinking. I was just making
when
sure.
we think about that a lot, their diet wasn't as varied as ours. I don't think they decided, where they wanted to go on Wednesday night before the live stream to eat. It's like you didn't have that many places. So,
That's kind of like here then. We don't have that many choices.
yeah, maybe so. But it just reminds me of those verses where we don't know the day or the hour. Not even the Son knows that, but only the Father. And it just gives us a chance to do that introspection to find out the things that are really important in life.
Mm-hmm.
And leaven sometimes is used of like negative influence. Like beware the leaven of the, and I guess the principle there is like the principle of the parable Jesus told, right? That the kingdom of heaven is like leaven, because she mixed it into the dough and then it gets in all of the dough. You can't, like if you put, I'm not much of a cook, but if you put leaven in something, it just gets all in whatever it is. You can't pour it in there and then just mix half of it up with leaven in it. It's in everything. So when he says things like beware of the leaven of the Pharisees or beware of the leaven of the Sadducees.
But then that's kind of interesting though, because you said, that Jesus uses it in a good example, like the kingdom of heaven. It's like that too.
Yeah.
So it's not always in that impure example, I guess.
No.
A lot of times it is. But.
Yeah, except for that one parable, when Jesus uses it, beware and it's actually the same event. It's just recorded the 3 times in the Gospels. It's when he's fed the 4,000, and he tells them beware the leaven of the Pharisees, and they're upset because they don't think they brought any bread, and so he's like, I just fed 4,000 people. Don't you think? But anyway, it's just the influence of the way that their teaching can permeate your life, and you get it in 1 Corinthians 5, where he's talking about. It's the situation in the church in Corinth where the man has his father's wife, which I'm assuming is his stepmother or, and he says, and so instead of being convicted of the sin about it, they're boasting about it. Right. And he says, this is 1 Corinthians 5, 6. Your boasting is not good. Don't you know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Cleanse out the old leaven that you may be a new lump as you really are unleavened. For Christ our Passover lamb has been sacrificed. Let us therefore celebrate the festival not with old leaven, the leaven of malice and evil, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So you know, that there he's talking about like,
The things that they're boasting about and the sins that they're committing is
Yeah.
affecting everything too, right?
right, there's an improper behavior in the church, and instead of them dealing with the improper behavior, they're boasting about the improper behavior, and he says that kind of sin will permeate the church. It'll spread all through it. Just like he uses the same kind of illustration in Galatians about the teaching about circumcision, that, you know, he calls it 11. I forgot.
Requiring them to
Yeah.
obey certain things that
Yeah.
aren't part of the gospel.
It says like you were running well, but who kept you from obeying the truth? A little leaven leavens the whole lump. You know, so if you let a false teaching in like that, then it'll spread throughout the church. Travis says that yeast is a bacteria. So, yeah, and I knew that kind of part, but I didn't really know. It must not apply to wine though, because they could drink wine at Passover.
There's baker's yeast and brewer's yeast.
Okay.
So is that the difference?
I have no idea. I have no clue. I've never really thought about wine having yeast in it at all, to be honest with you, until Travis brings it up. So then we'll have to
sure they
research.
knew.
I think
Yeah.
Travis
What
needs
they
to get
needed
up
to
here.
do.
Yeah, so we'll have Travis up here on a Passover night too. But that's a really good question. We'll have to look into that. I think though, you know, and Christ being our Passover lamb, and even Jesus saying, "This is my body, take and eat," when he institutes the Lord's Supper at Passover. You know, that unleavened bread, pure, you know, it represents the body of Jesus that he gave. He gave a pure body. It wasn't impure in any way. It didn't have any. What am I trying to say?
Any
No
sin,
sin.
any
Yeah,
leaven.
no sin, no added ingredients.
Right.
You know, it was, and
It's
so
organic.
yeah. But I think sometimes, maybe, and it's just me talking, but I think sometimes when we take that on Sunday, you know, it's just sometimes the thought process, well, it's communion, we just use unleavened bread. But we never think about the reason we use unleavened bread is because of first, Jesus' sinless body that he gave on the cross. And then the fact that, like the Passover, he delivered us from bondage. And like they ate it in haste, I mean, we live in a way that we know that this world is not our home. So we know that we're on a journey as well. And so I think sometimes that when we take communion, it's just good if we just kind of remember all of those thoughts and put it in context. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times we just, it's communion, so we use unleavened bread. But we don't realize the significance of using unleavened bread. And I think there's a really key significance to that. So, I don't know if we covered the stuff I had on this sheet or not.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting in Exodus where he says, "You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened." And that he's specifically talking about the Passover, or let the sacrifice of the feast of the Passover remain into the morning. And so next week we're going to actually talk about the lamb, you know, the process of how they pick the lamb. So kind of where we're going with this class is we talked about unleavened bread and how that played a part in it because it was the bread of haste and the bread of affliction. Then we're going to talk about the lamb and how they chose the lamb and the process that they went through with that and the bitter herbs. And then we're going to kind of look at some ways that Passover is celebrated now that aren't particularly the way that it's described in Exodus, but and then we have a list of questions here that we'll talk about. You know, like one night we're going to talk about the different cups that they would drink at the Passover, and that's not specified in the text. It's more of a Jewish tradition, but the tradition is based on the text, so it's very likely they could have done it the very same way. But we know it, like when Jesus took the Passover, he had more than one cup that they drank from. I mean, they drank more than once. So it might drink from. So anyway, we'll kind of go through some of that and maybe answer some questions about that. But I think, again, I think there's a real significance to understanding what the Passover meant and what it meant to the Israelites as they took it when they left Egypt in Exodus, and then how it was celebrated and what they were supposed to remember, and then how it's the precursor to communion and what we're supposed to remember. I'm afraid that sometimes with that stuff we just say, well, the Passover, that was Old Testament. We don't need to know anything about that. But we do need to know something about that because Jesus is our Passover lamb, and there's a reason that we use unleavened bread. And so I think it's very important that we understand the significance of it, even if we might not choose to take it, like we don't choose to celebrate it as the Passover, but I think it would be okay if we wanted to. It's just not a requirement for anybody. So, all right. Did you get a question?
No, that was not pertaining to this.
Not pertaining to this. Okay. Well, let's see. Did I get? I got those questions. So, hey, we're supposed to interview Cheryl. So, hey, if you have Passover questions, keep throwing them out there because we're going to be talking about this for a couple of weeks. And I don't know about the whole. We're going to put on. I don't know about putting on
Old Testament.
the Old Testament clothes, but maybe we will. Maybe we'll do that one night. It'll be kind of neat.
It's kind of cool when you think about it that all that, like it wasn't just an event, but the food all had meaning too.
Yeah.
Like we don't do that anymore. We're like, hey, let's get together and barbecue for 4th of July, but we
Right.
don't have any symbolic food for our country being free or something.
Yeah. Well, in that's a whole different discussion. I don't want to go down right now. But, but when you look at the Passover as the way it is described in the text, the only thing that's specifically mentioned is the lamb, the unleavened bread, and a bitter herb. So even now they have a Seder plate that has different things on it that represents different things, that seems like it developed through the centuries to become that, and each thing on there represents something, and we'll talk about that. But in the text, you only had those 3 foods that were mentioned.
Cool.
So I didn't bring any Cheryl questions, did you? I didn't bring that piece of paper where we wrote down all the questions. So this will be fun. Hey, we always start with this, which is, what is your favorite book of the Bible? So Jeff's was.
Oh,
James.
my.
His was James. Mine was
That's Dale's favorite.
Mine was Revelation. So
Okay.
it's your turn. What's your? And you can say you don't have one.
Well, it really does. It changes. My favorite book of the Bible definitely changes. But, if I had to go back and take an average of all my favorites, like I love the Old Testament because I love Old Testament stories. So I would probably say Genesis, honestly. That's the beginning. That's a good place.
That's a good place to start.
And one of my favorite things about Genesis is really kind of strange, or I think people might think it is strange, but something that always hits me hard is Hagar, when God, when she says, the God who sees me. That's like one of my favorite things out of Genesis. So
That's cool.
So I'll probably say Genesis. But it does change. Every year I have different favorites.
What is it right now?
I don't know if I have a favorite right now.
It hasn't currently changed.
Last year, it was Nehemiah. Reading it in the New Living Translation, which is the first time I'd read my Bible in that translation. Nehemiah was different, and I really liked it. I read it again because it was just different in that translation.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
That's why I think people should read from different translations.
yeah, I'm going
I
to do
think
that from now
I
on.
think it's really important for people to read from multiple translations, and just get a different feel of how some things are translated. Most of the differences are pretty insignificant. They're not huge,
Right.
but it's just the way that it reads. It's just.
It was much easier in the New Living Translation. It was much easier for me to get through Isaiah and Ezekiel and Jeremiah, those that I usually get bogged down in. It was much easier to get through them in this translation this year.
Yeah. And it's may
Plug
not.
for the New Living.
Yeah, it may not be a fair question, but is it because it's more of a dynamic equivalent translation?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the
Yeah.
differences in all the translations are. I just know I was able to read it a lot easier
Yeah, they're
and enjoy it.
They're very much more of a dynamic equivalence type of translation, and even in some places, like in a lot of those Old Testament books, they're more like a paraphrase than they are a translation. So that's why, in a lot of ways, it's easier to read because they make it that
It's not
way.
a paraphrase,
So,
but it's definitely
Yeah.
different.
so cool. All right, so Nehemiah. So if we need a lot of
That was last
information,
year.
okay.
I mean, I would say on
Genesis.
average, Genesis is one of my favorites. I love all the old stories in Genesis.
All right, well, cool. So, I mean, one of the things we've been asking is, like, how did you get to Clarksville Highway? How did you get here? Like, was there people who like were an influence on you getting here, or people while you were growing up that was an influence getting here? How did you get to Clarksville Highway?
No, not either one of those. It was when Dale and I got married that I didn't really, my mother went to church. She was the only person who went to church out of her family. She just went by herself. And so my dad was in the Air Force, so until we moved here in 5th grade, we lived in a different place every year. My mom would take us on occasion, to different places, but when we got here in 5th grade, we met, and some people may know Bill Sapp. He just passed away
I know Bill.
this past fall.
Yeah.
We met him when we first moved here, and he invited us to his church, the United Methodist Church in Ashland City. And my mom worked for him at the school system. And he's just one of those larger-than-life people, Bob Goff kind of people that took in people and, was just one of those kind of. And so we started going to church there where he went to church with him. And after Dale and I got married, we just decided to start visiting churches, and we just started picking them out and going to them. And we came here one Sunday. David Hunter was preaching, and he came to our house every week. We would ask him questions, and he would talk to us. And then Dale and I both, about a year after we got married, or a year and a half, both of us decided one Tuesday, it was the Tuesday that Miss Peggy Claude was having her Christmas party, that we both, that day, he came home from work and he said, "You want to go get baptized?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been thinking about that all day." And so we came down here and David baptized us. And nobody was here to watch us because they were all at Miss Peggy's Christmas party.
Well, you should have gone to Miss Peggy's to the Christmas
know, we
party.
should have.
I'm sure there was a pond out there
eaten
somewhere.
too.
Yeah, you could have eaten and gotten baptized. I'm sure there was a pond out there somewhere you could have gotten baptized in. So, okay, this
That's how we
is
ended
a
up here.
totally unrelated question. So, if your dad was in the Air Force, why here? I mean, there's not an Air Force base close by.
Well, when he retired,
Okay, when he retired.
his family
Okay.
was from East Tennessee, and he wanted to be near them, but not too near them.
Okay.
So,
Well, I was just thinking-
he chose Middle Tennessee.
I mean, the only Air Force base I could think of was down at Tullahoma.
Fort Campbell. Well, Fort Campbell has the 101st
Yeah.
on it. It's an Army base, but it
Right.
does have the 101st on it.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't know that. That's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So what year was that? Do you remember?
That we moved here?
No, like when you were baptized.
Oh, 1988.
Okay.
December of 1988.
All right.
Yeah.
So I don't remember when David was here when I moved here in 1992. When I moved here to preach at Cheap Hill, David was here then.
I think he left the year that Abby was born, or sometime
So-
around that, so probably around 96. he
Yeah,
left.
because I was living in Nashville when he left here. So that first time I met David, it's because I was preaching at Cheap Hill and he was here, and I came over one day and he gave me a tour of Clarksville Highway, like it was like 1993, maybe 94 or something like
Uh-huh.
that. Yeah, I didn't even know this church was here then. So, and the next time I heard about it was when Cindy called and said, "Hey, you want to come and fill in for us because we need somebody to fill in for a couple of weeks," and so, yeah.
Okay.
What
All right.
about, I guess your mom was pretty instrumental in your faith, taking you to church. Is there other people that you would say helped you in your faith growing up? I guess?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Sapp's whole family, his wife was a teacher at at the church, at the Methodist church when we went there, and his daughter became good friends with us, and Mrs. Sapp was probably the first time that I thought, and that was probably in high school, when I thought, if this is for real, then I stand to lose a lot if I don't believe in it. So I just kind of was like, I think I'll believe in Jesus, because if it is true, there's a lot more to lose than there is. And then in college, a friend of mine, Amy, was probably the first person that I knew who would say things like, I don't think Jesus wants me to do that. Like who had a personal relationship with Jesus and really made decisions and lived her life based on that relationship. So, and she's still a very good friend, prayer partner. And then actually after college, probably Denise Hunter, especially in the area of prayer. I think she really had a big influence on me just in recognizing the power of prayer, not just as a blessing before you ate your food or a nighttime, now I lay me down to sleep kind of thing. So those 3 people probably all had a big influence on me.
Cool.
Good answer.
Do you have another one?
I got all kind of questions.
Trying to remember what we asked. Oh, what's your favorite thing about working at Clarksville Highway, or attending, I guess?
Oh, the people, of course.
Oh,
Your coworkers.
yeah.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it's just, there's lots of support. I mean, being in some of these little Facebook communities and stuff that I'm in, I hear stories about people whose, preacher never talks to the kids, or they don't have support or help from, and I think that is so foreign to me. I mean, that is not what I experience at all. Like anything I ask for, need, want is never a problem.
Yeah.
So.
In a lot of ways, Clarksville Highway is a little bit unique with that. I mean, it really
I'm learning
is.
that.
Yeah. I mean, because even other churches that I've been a part of that were much, much larger did not have the same type of just that desire to jump in and help and do
Right.
stuff.
Right.
It was kind of like, it was just, and some of those were, churches 800, 900, 1,000, but they were just hard sometimes to get people to really step up. Which kind of leads me to my next question, because I wonder how you're going to answer this. What's your least favorite? What's your least favorite thing about being a children's minister at Clarksville Highway?
Well, I mean, my least favorite is my least favorite for everything in my life, which is technology. I mean, I'm terrible. I am.
Amen.
I don't know, how to make files, where they are when I've done them, or, I'm woefully unprepared in that whole area. I wish we could still just handwrite everything, but we can't. So I'm learning. I'm trying to learn, yeah, I mean, that's my least favorite thing.
Yeah, and that can be a challenge. I mean, especially
definitely
like
is
when
a
we're, like the TVs are in the classroom and you're trying to project something to the TV and the technology of trying to make that happen, and invariably something will go wrong and it doesn't work right, and then you're just scratching your head and you don't know what's wrong with it.
Well, or the 2nd grader or the 7th grader helps me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's all right.
I think, and I may get in trouble for this, I think the only thing that I did at a church one time that I think Diane told me she would never want me to do again was education director, because it was so
It's a lot of hats.
it was so hard to find teachers and keep them in a rotation. And I know sometimes, I mean, even with things that go on here, I mean, you're always trying to find new teachers and rotate teachers, and you don't want to leave one in there so long that they're burned out, but you don't want to not to leave them in there if they want to be in there, and then trying to find somebody to take a break, if somebody wants to take a break, finding somebody else to fill that spot. And then like if one of them wants to be gone for a weekend, then you got to find a teacher to stick in there
Yeah.
because a lot of times it's so easy just to say, well, I'll just go in there and teach that one, if they're gone. So I think sometimes and we're still pretty good at that at Clarksville Highway, but I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Brandy and Kayla teach together.
Right.
One week, one the next week, and they've been doing that a long time. I mean, longer than I thought
Yeah.
people would want to teach. But I think because it's every other week, it really gives them a break. It gives them an automatic substitute. Twice a month is just more doable than every week.
gives a lot of flexibility.
So, yeah, I think that's a great way to do it, or it has been for them.
Good answers. What else did we ask?
I don't
Trying
remember.
to think. Oh, you got any good spiritual habits that you would suggest for other people?
Oh, wow. Well, one that I'm trying to work on this year, every year I do a, New Year's resolution. Last year it was to not complain. I don't know how well I did with that. But this year I'm trying to do what is, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the emotionally healthy disciple, emotionally healthy. There's several different emotionally healthy things out there. But in this one, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, Pete Scazzaro is the author, and he has a devotional book called The Daily Office, where you are supposed to sort of just abide in God at regular intervals during your day, to kind of refocus you that everything belongs to God, everything goes through that lens. And he said he was talking about how David 7 times a day, I guess, had certain times that he prayed, and then Daniel 3 times a day, and he's saying, that was his basis for starting this. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm trying to do, and it's difficult because you start out with silence and you end with silence, and every time you're silent, it's like C.S. Lewis said, people start knocking and you are thinking about all sorts of things. And so that's why the Hagar, I try to go back and say, the God who sees me, and just kind of breathe and think about the God who sees me. So that, I guess, maybe, I'm trying to learn to listen to God and not just tell him everything I want. I don't know if that.
We need you on the
I'm not
retreat.
good at that, so I wouldn't say that's something that's helped me, but maybe, I'm trying to learn it. Maybe it will help someone else.
Well, I think it's really good because we're a very distracted society.
Very, 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 very. I
mean,
was
you
so
just-
surprised at how quickly my mind goes.
Yeah, and we've programmed our minds not to have any silence, because if you have just like a second of downtime, I mean, you grab your phone, you look at your phone, do you have any text messages, and we'll look something up on the internet. I mean, this thing is probably one of the worst things we've ever invented. Because it really, I mean, it consumes all of the time that you allow it to consume.
Yeah.
So to have times of silence is really, it really is. It's difficult in our society for people to carve out times. Commend you for that.
And then we always think God's not speaking.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
Right.
you're not quiet enough to hear.
Yeah, because you won't
Yeah.
stop.
Shut up.
It is hard, and usually, I usually only get like a morning and a midday. Like evening hardly never happens. But,
And
see,
usually,
ask me again in September.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be better.
and usually when you start that process too, starting the process, it's easy to become frustrated because it's so difficult to turn your mind off when you're supposed to be having silence. Then you find your mind wandering everywhere, and you get frustrated with yourself. You say, I can't even sit here and be quiet for 5 minutes or 2 minutes, but without thinking about it, because now my mind's gone off somewhere completely different. I'm supposed to be sitting here in silence, and so as you develop that habit, it's really hard. I mean, because it's easy to get frustrated with yourself.
Yeah.
You could do, wasn't it Robbie who went and did like the
Oh, I
the
thought
silent
about
thing?
him. I thought about him when I
Was it a
started
week or was
this.
it a weekend?
Yeah,
I think it was a week,
it was a
wasn't
week.
it? A week of silence. It's like, man, I don't know that I could
Go
do.
crazy.
I might enjoy that actually. Maybe I go do a week of silence somewhere.
Yeah.
Diane and several people who know me are laughing right now because they know it's
Was
like,
everybody,
it'll
like
never
you
happen.
go somewhere and everyone was
Yeah,
silent?
I think everybody was silent. Yeah, so I mean, it's not like you're supposed to. Nobody was supposed
You're
to be
silent
talking.
where
I'd
everyone
have
else
to
is
ask him where he
talking.
went. I mean, I think Shaw has done that as well. I mean, I think Shaw has gone and done that maybe once or twice.
That's pretty cool.
So you can text me later, Shaw, and let me know if you had. But anyway, cool. All right. Anything you want us to know? Anything you just want your church family to? All we're doing is we're just trying to get to know people. Just asking some questions. How did we get here? Who had an influence on you? And we're glad you're here. We're glad that
Thank you.
you
It's good to be
visited
here.
around and in 19 whatever you decided to.
1988.
1988. That was the year I got married. So,
Oh, I'm not going to speak.
yeah.
The year you were born.
No,
Were you
Not
bo-
even that.
not even that.
So what year? So you were born. Wait a minute. Let me guess. 93.
Yep.
There we go. 93. Yeah. Wow. Make me feel old. The reason my hair is this color and your hair is that color.
Right.
All right. So are there any questions out here? Let me check my question list. No questions for Cheryl there. No
neither.
questions for Cheryl there.
I got one more question, I
Okay,
guess.
and none there.
So do you have a favorite like preacher or author or something that you always listen to?
I
know, some
love
people-
Tony Evans.
Oh,
I
yeah,
listen to
he's
him
good.
a lot. Yeah,
Tony Evans.
yeah.
What's his daughter's name? She's big now.
Well, he has two. Priscilla Shire is
Yeah.
probably the one you're thinking
That's
of.
what I
Yeah,
was
she's
thinking.
been.
I
in
didn't even
some
know that till
movies
like a couple
and-
weeks ago. I was like, that's his daughter?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
So yeah, I listen to his podcasts a lot. I
Okay,
really
cool.
like
Oh,
him.
yeah. See, you got the technology down.
Well-
You got the podcast.
Hey, you can podcast?
Well,
Greg
Hey, that's
did
good
podcast.
technology.
my girls, got me the app, and I know where to go to find him.
So the girls got you on the podcast path. They've got you straightened out. Sort of.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny. We talked about podcasts last week, and Greg said he didn't listen to any. Me
No.
and Houston were talking about all these podcasts and stuff.
No, I don't.
So-
I don't even know where the podcast app is on my phone. I mean, I know
don't
it's
either,
on there,
except
but
for him.
but for like it's great that you're plugging into that. But like the Houston, Jeff, your girls, that generate ride. I mean, podcast is a big thing. I mean, that's
Big,
what they
very
listen to.
big, Yeah.
And I remember Houston would listen to him driving back and forth from Missouri. I think he listened to History Podcast. I'm not sure. No, don't remember.
I listened to him at the gym.
Really?
I also
Yeah.
love Beth Moore Bible studies.
Yeah.
I love, a lot of her books, and I was trying to think of other people too, but yeah, her for sure too.
Good deal.
Very good.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us.
Thank
Thanks for Cheryl for being
you.
here.
Yeah.
Y'all see her, say it was great to have her interviewed. Next week, I'm not sure who we're interviewing. I will make a schedule at the elders meeting Sunday morning because it's supposed to be one of the elders over the next 6 weeks because I've already been interviewed. So there's 6 elders and hopefully we'll have them on the next 6 weeks and then we'll start reaching out to just people in church and having them. See, like we should have had Dale come in with you, but we'll have to have him come in separate.
Yes, Dale has taught me a lot of things.
Cool. Hey, thanks for joining, and we're signing off, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, y'all were very